Now that everyone has forgotten about Twin Peaks: The Return, I think it's important to discuss the villain Evil Cooper, and how he was a poorly conceived character with both unclear motivation and wasted potential, who ultimately meant nothing to the story in the grand scheme of things. Then again, almost nothing from the show meant much when it was all said and done. So the Cooper that we get in Part 18 seems like a hybrid of all the previous iterations of Cooper that we've seen on the show, and the sort of behavior of this specific Cooper rendition could have served as a general model of what Evil Cooper should have been like, if they explored the idea of him manipulating people into thinking that he was the real Cooper. He could be a man that people could have believed changed with the ravages of time, but he would draw suspicion from those who knew him well enough if closely examined. He could have used his FBI connections to do evil things too. It's only implied that he did things of this nature in the past. He had Jeffries, or fake Jeffries, or Teapot Jeffries, who knows, call Albert and have him give intel about their man in Colombia. Wouldn't this be more effective if we see him manipulating Albert or Gordon in the show, and it results in some consequence for a character that we know? He was also pretty cruel to Diane and Audrey, but we don't even get to see real versions of either of these two characters, with Audrey's coma situation and Diane being a tulpa and all, so we don't quite see the full impact it had on their lives. And it's also made less effective when we're just told of these evil things that he did in the past, rather than it being played out during the time when the show takes place. Also, whenever Evil Cooper kills somebody like Daria, it's like, okay, that person was involved in a life of crime and we barely knew them. Maybe have him torture Carl Rod or Papa Cap and Bobby, something along those lines. Then we might care a little bit. And what the hell is this photo? Who took this picture and how does the FBI have it? Was Ray Monroe hiding in Evil Cooper's yard? Or maybe doing a photo shoot with him? It looks like he's about to drop the hottest album since Krista Bell's recent work. So we get none of the aforementioned stuff with Evil Cooper actually doing interesting things and abusing his power and appearance.
Are you upset with me?
Well, actually, he briefly tricks Andy into thinking that he's the real deal, even though Andy received knowledge from the fireman that there are two Coopers. So he did absolutely nothing with the information he received from a 10-minute scene. But hey, at least Andy was subjected to watching season 3 like the rest of us. The problem with Evil Coop is that he doesn't seem to have a plan. Not only does this make the character look weak on a surface level, but it also gives the viewer little to care about when we see him on screen. What is he doing? Why is he doing it? I guess we know that he wants mysterious things for unknown reasons. He wants to know more about this card, which one could only assume is related to Judy and the mother. But so what? We don't know anything about Judy or what she is capable of. And the show doesn't pay much attention to her either until she is randomly brought up during a conversation between Evil Coop and Jeffries in Part 15. We're not gonna talk about Judy's capabilities. In fact, we're not gonna talk about them at all. Evil Cooper also wants coordinates. And I guess it's supposed to be a ticking clock situation where he needs them by a certain date. Talk about procrastinating. And he seems quite lackadaisical about it too. What does he plan on doing with these coordinates anyways? Well, he doesn't really know either, as when he finally gets them, he falls into a trap by the fireman, and with a few swipes, he's transported to the sheriff's station. Shouldn't he have a general idea where he's supposed to go? Does the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Station really seem like the proper destination to find some evil entity or something? And then Evil Coop is shot by Lucy and that's the end of him. Nice knowing you, pal. No epic showdown with his inverse self? No, that's too predictable. We need to be thrown a curveball which isn't anywhere near as exciting or satisfying as it unfolding as you would expect. Lynch and Frost continuously decided to subvert expectations in the show for the sole sake of a twist. In this case, Lucy killing Evil Coop for a quick laugh. There are many more examples of this too. For instance, in Part 16, instead of having the Mitchum brothers confront the Hutchins duo for some epic shootout, which was clearly built up as soon as they became friends with Dougie, we instead have some random accountant show up and shoot them, while the Mitchum brothers cower behind cover. So much fun watching some random character take out dangerous criminals who teased that they were going to torture Dougie Jones, while two semi-likable gangsters have any remaining narrative purpose totally removed from them. It's such a stupid scene that Twin Peaks apologists had to come up with some bullshit excuses and theories like, "This is David Lynch's commentary on Tarantino. You see him shooting up Tim Roth there?" Or another good one is that the accountant was sent from the White Lodge, cause he has a white car. Another issue with Evil Coop is that he poses no immediate or serious threat to anybody in the show. Well, I suppose he's a bit of a threat to Bob. Evil Coop gets shot twice in less than a week. He's picked up by the authorities, he unknowingly worked with an FBI informant, he surrounds himself with incompetent people who either get killed or arrested. I mean, really? Shouldn't he have tried to kill Dougie Jones himself after a certain point? Or was he scared shitless of Dougie Jones's karate moves? He also commands Diane to shoot the beloved Blue Rose Task Force, but she stood no chance next to a pacifist. And he also gets tricked by a floating head for good measure.
Tricked you, fucker.
Then there's the issue of there being no real mystery in the show. Nothing is at stake, as characters in Las Vegas do their own thing, the FBI chill at a hotel, Twin Peaks residents in the sheriff's station don't do anything of note, and Evil Coop wanders around aimlessly. You would expect Hawk to have some sort of value in the story, after all those phone calls with the log lady who warned him of fire, where he's going, and whatnot. But no, when everything is going down, he was too busy taking a dump or something. One would expect all the loose plot threads to connect in a satisfying conclusion, with each character serving some purpose. No. Instead, everyone just sort of stands around, or in some cases sits down, and watches what might be the most embarrassing and out-of-place scene in television history. The idea of Bob was one of the best things about the original show and film, and in the return, he's reduced to an orb that repeatedly crashes into people. Ineffectively, I might add. Why does the great evil entity Bob even hang around with some loser like Evil Coop anyways? I guess Bob ain't much better himself, as he gets humiliated by some character with a green glove that we barely knew. I couldn't even begin to describe the feeling I had while watching this scene. It was unlike anything I've seen before. My brain was sending all sorts of hormones into my bloodstream. The only thing this scene was missing was Bushnell Mullins offering boxing tips to Freddy. If they make a season 4, they should call it Twin Peaks The Schlock Returns. There might actually be two sorts of pseudo-mysteries in the show. One form of a so-called mystery that the show presents is when Lynch and Frost withhold basic information until later on in the season, for no reason at all. An example of this is whether or not Audrey and Evil Cooper are the parents of Richard Horne. They teased this idea from one of the earlier episodes, leading fans to endlessly speculate about this insignificant issue, only for them to reveal that they are the parents in part 15. There was no reason to withhold that information for that long. Because guess what? The whole thing with Richard Horne was inconsequential. This type of information could have been revealed at any earlier episode and it wouldn't have made the slightest difference. Another example of a phony type of mystery is when the show presents something random, and then it never returns again. An example of this would be when the FBI are looking at some photo with Evil Cooper and some random man in New York City. You can speculate all you want, but it doesn't matter. It has no consequence on anything, and no other details are offered to try to piece anything together in a coherent manner. But fans will sit there and come up with their own ridiculous theories, but it isn't a true mystery. After watching stuff from earlier in Lynch's career, and even certain scenes in The Return, it's difficult to be shocked or impressed when you see some avant-garde baloney. It was a little cool when you saw that the arm was now a tree, especially when you know about the whole situation with Michael J. Anderson. But once you get to the point where Philip Jeffries is a teapot, it's sort of like, okay, I guess that's cool. We're so used to the shtick of Lynch being off his rocker that it doesn't have much of an impact or register with the viewer in an effective way, especially with some of the stuff in the two-part finale. Not only did we see even more totally bonkers stuff earlier in the season, but it's also baloney we've seen in other Lynch films like Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, etc. So, going back to the coordinates once again, who were the 3 people that sent coordinates to Evil Coop by part 16? And which 2 of those 3 people sent the intentionally wrong coordinates? Now this is about to get complicated and almost nonsensical, but it goes to show how sharp Lynch and Frost are when they came up with what can laughingly be called a plot. So I suppose it's safe to assume that it was Ray Monroe, Philip Jeffries, and Diane who sent the coordinates, but we never see Diane give coordinates to him until after Evil Coop visits the location where Richard Horne dies. Now, we also know that Ray Monroe was supposedly an informant with the FBI, which opens up its own can of worms. And we also know that Jeffries helps Good Coop go back in time at the end of the series. So we could also assume that Ray and Jeffries both sent Evil Coop faulty coordinates in an attempt to kill him. But then that would mean Diane sent the real coordinates. So why does Evil Coop end up sending her a message, putting her into a panic where she changes the last couple of digits in her coordinates? Was she unsure of the last couple of digits and randomly changed them in the hopes that it would be correct now? Or did she try sending another set of faulty coordinates in an attempt to buy some more time for something? And where did she get the coordinates anyways? I guess she took a peek at Albert's picture from earlier in the season, but Albert was aware that she was looking at them. And both Albert and Cole knew something fishy was going on with Diane. The scene plays out as if they were setting her up with faulty coordinates or something like that. But maybe they're that stupid that they just let her look at the coordinates. So again, who sent the coordinates? Who knows? And in the end, who cares?